It gives me great pleasure to introduce the founding member of the Punk Scholars Network, talking about Kirishnacore, the divine aesthetic thereof, Dr. Mike Dines. Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah!
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to begin this afternoon by just quickly running through our title, From New York Punk to Hare Krishna Monk, Bhakti-rasa and a Devotional Aesthetic of Kirishnacore. And also, it's very small, I know, is to quickly read through this Sanskrit here, or the transliteration, Roman literation of transcript, which is taken from a book called The Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya was, for many, the kind of leading light for the Hare Krishna movement. And you all know who the Hare Krishnas are. You've all seen the Hare Krishnas. You've all heard the Hare Krishna mantra. For this particular verse says, "My Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names." Many of you have heard the Hare Krishna mantra, the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. For the Hare Krishnas, they chant these holy names because the name of Krishna is in itself transcendental. By saying the name Krishna, okay, you're able to approach Krishna. You're able to have attraction for Krishna, to have some kind of relationship with Krishna. Something that's really important that I'm going to talk about today is the relationship between sound and the divine. Okay, the relationship between Indian aesthetics and the way in which we approach popular music via Indian aesthetics. So, of course, it doesn't really come as little surprise that punk rock and religion, which are rather two kind of different ways to enlightenment, have seldom been congenial bedfellows. There's kind of lyrical discontent from a number of different sources. John Lydon's sermonic recitation in religion and his sneering depiction of a fat pig priest and sanctimonious smiles. Then Jello Biafra from Dead Kennedys, his depiction of nausea and sickness in a track called Religious Vomit. He says, all religions make me want to throw up. All religions want to make me sick. Therefore, punk and religion have kind of rarely been, seen eye to eye, and instead kind of regard each other with censure and disapproval and disgust. Accompanying this, the study of punk and the analysis of punk remains within a kind of Western methodological canon, drawn from the central focus of the CCCS, the Birmingham Centre for Contemporary Cultural Studies, which is obviously centred in Birmingham University and which began in the mid-1960s. Punk has been explored within a framework that has relied upon concepts developed around the growing area of kind of cultural studies and kind of new musicology. Today, I really want to talk about what was called Kirishnacore, a subgenre from the straight edge movement. And I'm going to approach this from what I've just said as kind of different aesthetic framework, that of kind of Indian philosophy. I'm going to use interviews from guys called Ray Cappo, who sang in Shelter, a band called Shelter, and Victor Kara, who sang in a band called 108. And I'm going to use texts such as The Nectar of Devotion, The Complete Science of Bhakti Yoga, by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who was the founder member of the Hare Krishna movement, and also Bhakti-rasa, which is a kind of the original to this before Prabhupada really just rewrote this and placed it within kind of a more readable edition for Western audiences. So, primarily meaning to taste or to savour, rasa theory is used to categorise and delineate aesthetic experience, how we feel things, how we describe things. So the linking between the aesthetic and the devotional, bhakti-rasa and bhakti yoga, okay, is used to denote transcendental emotions in the complex relationship with Krishna. In previous work, I've shown that musicians such as Kapo and Dekara were not only devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement during their time in Shelter in 108, but were also studious in their approach towards devotion in the context of the aesthetic and the context of the way in which they were singing, writing and talking about Krishna through the eyes and the sounds of a punk band. For me, I'd like to kind of further examine this interest, this link between bhakti yoga and rasa and punk rock, putting upon repertoire in the writings of both to discuss the encapsulation of devotion through a punk aesthetic. I'm not going to give a kind of historical overview of Kirishnacore. I would, however, like to note that it came from straight edge punk. And the straight edge movement and the Hare Krishna movement shared a kind of ethical high ground in terms of vegetarianism, non-drug use and condemnation of illicit sex. The latter provided a systematic means through which to explore the transcendental and the philosophical. Although the Krishna's 4 regulative principles, which we can see here, no eating meat or fish, gambling, intoxicants, illicit sex, led the way, what for many cemented that relationship was the scientific, philosophical and theological system on which the Hare Krishna movement was based. A complex and principled form of spirituality and devotion termed of bhakti yoga. So in other words, what we have here is the straight edge punk thinking and believing and practicing vegetarianism, no illicit sex, alcohol being drug free. That relationship to Krishna consciousness, and I know this is a really complex relationship which I can't really kind of unpack within 20 minutes. There was a real crossover and a real link between Krishna consciousness and straight edge punk. However, what Krishna consciousness did was bring upon this and have this accompanying Indian aesthetic, this theological and philosophical framework that had gone back thousands and thousands of years, which married up and gave meaning to straight edge punk. If the Hare Krishna movement was kind of new in the West, it was quite the opposite in India. The Hare Krishna movement was linked with Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It was a branch of Hinduism in which the Hare Krishnas drew their religious beliefs, having a devotional heritage stretching back over 3,000 years and kept alive by a long line of what's called parampara, a line of disciplic succession passed from guru to student and placed within a sampradaya, one of ancient religious traditions in India. As such, musicians like Ray Cappo, Victor Kara, Robert Fish became to engage with ideas drawn from ancient Indian texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, both central within Vaishnavism. I like the way Eastern philosophies approached religion and spirituality as if it was something logical, something scientific, notes Victor Kara here. There are lengthy, detailed explanations of just about every aspect of what they talk about. And these explanations are right out in front, not hidden away for debate in some seminary or some mystical version of scripture. If Takara was drawn to the scientific, then Kappa was drawn to the notion of the soul. What I understand about reincarnation is that I know that I'm not a body. I am an observer. That's all I am. I am a passenger, he said. And for Robert Fish, who's unfortunately not up there, there's a relationship between disciple and kind of spiritual realisation. At some point, the practitioner of any discipline, philosophy or lifestyle will hit that stage where there is a deep and life-altering moment, where you step back, examine life and find your person within, and at times maybe outside of that given lifestyle. As such, Kirishnacore, this link between the straight edge, between the punk, the Hare Krishna movement, ancient notion of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, incorporated a new conscious aesthetic. Bands such as Shouter and 108 began to sing of reincarnation. They began to sing of the concept of Paramatma, or the super soul. And Saranagati surrender to Krishna. However, lyrical references were not just references or kind of shallow gestures towards subcultural values and membership, nor were they simply a kind of idea of expression of a kind of an ethereal anger. Instead, lyrics now included close reference to specific Vedic texts, obvious allusions towards Indian philosophical ideals, and meaningful rants concerning spirituality and what the Vaishnavas call the material world. Bands such as 108, Shouter and others began to articulate a relationship with Krishna, this bhakti-rasa, through musical expression, using the punk idiom as a means of cultivating and executing devotional service to Krishna. To place within the tradition of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the Hare Krishnas drew inspiration primarily from the writer and philosopher Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seen by many as a full incarnation of Lord Krishna, and whose theological premise is one based upon realising a personal relationship with God. With yoga widely interpreted as to connect, and bhakti signifying pure love or devotional service, bhakti yoga therefore is a practice whereby an individual reconnects with God through acts of love, service and or devotional service. It is also the Gaudiyas, the disciples of Chaitanya, that also conceived of explaining this subject matter in the language of aesthetics, as through the notion of rasa, emotion or sentiment. One is able to relish a kind of metaphysical, transcendental relationship with Krishna himself. In other words, the many features of the musical object, lyrical content, texture, mood, timbre, etc., were used as a kind of unifying whole to express a sense of devotion towards Krishna. And rasa is a very, very complex notion. It's like a flavour, a sentiment, it's an emotion. For Indians and for Hindus, music is a very, and especially sound vibration is especially extremely important. Many believe that sound created the world, especially through the notion of Om. The aesthetic between bhakti, this notion of rasa, therefore provides an important link between Kirishnacore and Gaudiya Vaishnavism, used as a means of interpreting the devotional relationship a devotee may have with Krishna. Rasa is often equated to juice or taste, flavour, and is seen to be the essence, the actual essence itself of aesthetic experience. It is, as Prabhupada points out, the mellow relished in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, and encapsulates emotions such as compassion, tragedy, laughter, longing and love. Furthermore, rasa, this flavour, and this flavour towards bhakti and devotional service, using rasa, using the notion of Indian aesthetics, and using the expression of music and bhakti is kind of central in the correlation of the punk aesthetic and the sacred. As many wondered how a punk band may convey the devotional, how can a punk band, a hardcore band, express notions of the devotional? Musicians such as Victor Kara points out that bhakti-rasa, or waves of devotion, as it's called, not only incorporated sentiments such as love, laughter, compassion, it also encapsulated fury, horror, disgust, emotions incumbent in Kirishnacore's own devotional texts for Krishna. So to be closer to Krishna are these waves of devotion, the Eastern Ocean, varieties of devotional service, ecstasy, the Southern Ocean, general symptoms of transcendental mellow, ecstatic expressions, transient, ecstatic. Here we have the Northern Ocean, compassion, anger, dread. You can be angry with Krishna. That's okay to be angry with Krishna. You still have a relationship with Krishna, and it's about dealing with that relationship and nurturing that relationship. For people like Dikara and for Capo then, musical material, and in this sense punk, became a vehicle for expressing the devotional, became a vehicle for rasa, for bhakti-rasa. Not just through lyrical content, but also through the conjuring up of aesthetic experience, through the many branches of the musical object itself. A good example of this is 108's Gopinath, a track taken from the album Holy Name. Gopinath is another name for Krishna. 108 is a very holy number on the beads that the Krishnas chant with. There are 108 beads. It's a very auspicious number, 108. So the track is from an album called Holy Name. It's called Gopinath, and it's by 108. Both titles reflect the intrinsic nature of devotion, with the album title in particular reiterating the importance of evoking God, holy name, by the recitation of his name. An important aspect in the aesthetic of the Hare Krishnas. Remember, Gopinath, Krishna, holy name encompasses the transcendental. The name itself is transcendental. For them, there is no difference between the vibrational qualities of the word Krishna and Krishna himself, and thus the reason for the recitation of the Maha Mantra, the Krishna mantra, as it is also known. So there we have kind of lyrical content. Oh Gopinath, please hear my request. A kind of delivered through a spoken, prayerful manner, as you will hear. It's hardly audible above the guitar and rhythm section. The rasa of surrender and application are aided by the repetition of rhythmic motif, emphasising a kind of prayerful, also mantra-like lyrical content, as the vocalist declares to being a wicked materialist, addicted to worldly desires, but hoping that Krishna would not consider this servant an outsider. Music and lyrical content work together to provide an aesthetic of renunciation and surrender. As 108 exploit the different timbres and kind of textures of the ensemble, structure is maintained by riff more than verse-chorus structure, kind of portraying an ethereal background to the track. I'm now going to play this track. If you could just remember this kind of Lord of the Gopis, please hear my request. There's just a sense of surrender. God, please hear my request. I am addicted to worldly desires, and no good qualities do I possess. I am a servant of lust. Worldly desires are awakening in my heart, and the noose of fruitive work is beginning to tighten. I do not know what devotion is, he's saying to Krishna. Abandoning my real treasure, I have worshipped this mundane world, but please do not consider this servant an outsider. Just to reiterate, this is a hardcore band. This hardcore band is not singing to you, he's not singing to himself. This hardcore band are singing to Krishna. That wasn't part of it, that. Just waiting here just to make sure it doesn't move on to another track. Okay. If one awakes musical stylistics, beckon kind of the notion of the ethereal and the otherworldly, then Shelter's Saranagati relies upon a more kind of grounded aesthetic. Founded instead on a clear verse-chorus structure and encompassing melodious vocals instrumentation, Saranagati evokes more a sense of proselytization than kind of renunciation. It evokes more a sense of translated as surrender. Saranagati opens with a sample of Sri Prabhupada reciting the Hare Krishna mantra and preceding lyrical content embracing the sense of the devotional. I'm trying to understand that you're my supreme friend. You're beside me and you guide me like no one else, Capo sings. Help me see you in everything in you. Before a desperate, piteous delivery of Saranagati, repeated throughout the chorus. Lyrical delivery is kind of clear, pronounced, framed within a kind of traditional framework, but the essence of the devotional remains. Both tracks lyrically delve into the theological, drawing upon ideas central to Vaishnavism. Yet the importance does not lie just with lyrical content, and not with kind of the expression of lyrical, but the kind of sonic intent, the notion of the sonic. It's kind of tracks are performed in a sense of a devotional service to Krishna, and have been written as a means to further the practitioner's relationship with him. The importance is not just in style, nor in the genre as such, but more as a kind of devotional communication of the musical object. And again, people in this world actually claim they possess land and sky and water, but they try to forget that everything they build and everything that they kill was handed to them by your free will. I'm trying to understand you're the supreme friend, you're beside me, and you guide me like no one else can. This idea of bhakti and the idea of rasa is about having a kind of relationship with Krishna, building a relationship with Krishna, whether that will be a friend, whether that would be like a father figure, whether that will be a lover, as with the gopis. Let's have a listen to this. So I've already said, this is more melodic in nature. It's not ethereal. It's clear kind of verse chorus structure. And it is kind of proselytizing. Capo's in your face. He's telling you this is how he feels. This is how he feels about Krishna. Here we go. And then Sri Prabhupada, the guy who founded the Hare Krishna movement, with the Hare Krishna mantra at the background.
Was to live by your free will. Second-hand gods, that's all we are created, manipulated, and leaving the scars. Dropping from the earth and stealing from the trees. Now that I need even false prestige, but it's all yours. What do we own? Not family, property, it's all unknown. But I'm marginally mine, abundant in mind. Fighting war for what's on ours, here's what people shout and I love it.
You know, you can feel that the bhakti-rasa is one of surrender, not only through lyrics, but also through the song itself, through lyrical content and vocal delivery.
You beside me and you got me like no one else can help me see you in everything and everything in you. Will I appreciate all that you do? Even pain in this world needs to help us see reality of material misery. Please help me transcend. I want it to end. Happiness apart from you, I can just pretend. And you're just so kind, you give us your mind. The truth of God, you all leave you behind. Forget reality, we create this wild day. I'm sick of this fallacy.
So you can see that I haven't included all the lyrics up there because it's just too many lyrics, really. But you know, you're the supreme friend, you're beside me and you guide me like no one else can. Help me see you in everything. This notion of fighting wars for what's not ours, so here's my plea for surrender. And we're back to Prabhupada. So you've got this kind of Kirishnacore, this blending of aesthetic, the blending of the kind of traditional Indian aesthetic, but through the eyes of Kirishnacore, through the eyes of straight edge in the 1990s.
Try to gratify my senses, what have I gained? The so-called pleasure is a sensation of pain. Fool myself with love, again and again. Attracted by romance, especially the end. Surrounded by people, and left all alone. And even among friends, I feel more alone. We're all with each other, but you're different from me. Like I'm just the same, I'm one of the friends. Another day,
I'm going to move on to the last example. If Gopinath and Saranagati were written for the kind of mood of love and surrender, Victikara from 108 in particular looked to emulate the notion of fury, disgust, horror and disgust within his writing. Whereas Shelter, the one that you've just heard, deals with devotional subject matter through a kind of more conservative, if you like, melodic form of punk. 108 moved towards the horror, the frustration, the fury, repertoire including Holy Name, Shun the Mask, and Mantra 6, proclaimed a kind of new cry of devotional pain and frustration, where the confrontational supersedes the agreeable and the devotion and affection turn into kind of anger and frustration. In the minute-long Shun the Mask, for instance, lyrical content is often difficult to decipher and when read has less direct meaning and interpretation. Tear tears through my eyes, a screaming struggle to shin and shallow me is heard at the beginning of the track. Penetrate the pretense of this plastic life. Hard? Yes, it's hard. What did I expect? Easy life, easy lie. Words and music merge into a kind of forthright, kind of blunt aesthetic. As with Gopinath, vocal delivery fuses with the remaining ensemble, creating a kind of dense texture of musical shapes, akin to much of kind of like the punk idiom. Yet there is a kind of novelty that lies within the intent of the musical object. Guitars, drums and vocals are now used as a means of expressing devotion. whether via frustration, surrender or anger towards Krishna. Although the location and means remain the same, punk venue, instruments and attitude, the focus has changed. Instead of frustration towards a capitalist society, frustration is now diverted towards becoming closer and more intimate with Krishna, with God. This is the 1 minute shun the mask, I hope. So therefore, using bhakti-rasa as an aesthetic framework, one is able to kind of shed further light on the kind of unique fusion of Western popular music and Eastern-based Indian spirituality and the lifestyle of the Vaishnavas. Furthermore, with band members such as Capo, Victor Cara, Robert Fish becoming Hare Krishna devotees, and thereby living in temples and studying of texts, Krishna began to become aware of the notion of rasa, and thus making no apology for the antagonism, frustration and longing found in punk. Instead, they kind of embraced the anger, screaming, sweating, bleeding and writing of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and certainly not, in some sense, the kind of Om Shanti transcendental meditation or yoga class that many think that it merely is. Singing of the values of Vaishnavism, the Hare Krishnas, exploring and reciting the stories and pastimes of the deity of Krishna, and appropriating many of the lifestyle choices of the Hare Krishna movement became part and parcel of this new musical genre. Yes? No? That's what I wanted, that. Thank you. And should I end with what Russell Brand, how Russell Brand ends all his stand-ups? Do you know how he ends it? Hare Krishna. Which is Russell Brand. Hare Krishna. Thank you.